First of all, I just want to say thank you to those of you who have taken an interest in my experience and what I went through. I know I've been pretty open about it with my friends and occasionally on social media, but I just, for some reason, felt the need to make a video for myself and for anyone else who was curious. Just to give you an idea, I went to the ER on the 15th of this past December, but I had had stomach pain for a year or so before that. It wasn't every time I ate, but most of the time I would eat and get this burning pain almost right after I would eat. It, like I said, wasn't every time, but it was consistent enough that it was starting to worry me. So I went to my primary doctor and they just said, "Oh, we think you have something called gastritis," and they gave me some medicine, and I was like, okay. So carried on with life, and December, I started noticing, like, I'm eating a lot less. People around me started noticing that it didn't take a lot to get me full, which, you know, whatever, I didn't pay too much attention to, but it started to make sense after all of this played out. So December 15th was a normal day. I was working, and around 2 o'clock that day I had like a sandwich and some chips, I think, and a coffee from Starbucks. And I went into work at 4, didn't eat anything, felt fine. And then around 6:30-ish, I started feeling really bloated, like the bloated feeling you get after eating a lot of food. And I was kind of confused. I was like, this is weird. And then I started getting a lot of pain to the point where I couldn't really stand up straight, which was obviously concerning and nothing like I had had before. So I went home and was home for maybe 5 minutes, and then we finally decided, like, okay, let's go get this checked out. Luckily, the ER didn't really have a wait time, so I got into a room right away, kind of explained to them what was going on, and they hooked me up to an IV and started giving me fentanyl, which is a really strong painkiller. Helped the pain. They wanted to do a scan, so they gave me this contrast liquid, like 2 8-ounce bottles of it, and they're like, you need to drink this before your scan so we can see what's going on. I was like, okay. It surprisingly enough didn't taste bad, but I drank maybe this much and threw up because I just couldn't keep it down. Then they were like, okay, we're gonna give you water, but if you can't keep that down, like, we're gonna have to admit you. And had a little bit of water and threw up a lot. So that's when they decided to take me up to the 4th floor, and they did the tests and everything. So the next morning they had my results, and they said, you know, we think you have this condition called superior mesenteric artery syndrome. And of course we didn't know what it was. And they explained it to us after they determined that my stomach was way too big, 4 times enlarged, I believe is what it was. So this is the scan that they had taken, and as you can see, my stomach was a lot bigger than what it's supposed to be. They said we need to insert an NG tube and try to pump out some of that liquid in your stomach so it can shrink back down. They did the NG tube, and for those of you who don't know what that is, it's the tube through your nose, down the back of your throat, and into your stomach. So these are a few pictures of what the NG tube was and what it looked like. It was very uncomfortable. I hated it. It hurt to swallow, it hurt to talk. maybe I'm petty for this, but it took them 3 times to get it down. It was awful. They would like get it down to like, I don't know, here in my esophagus and then pull it back up because it literally just wouldn't fit. So finally they got a smaller tube and it went down. It was a very uncomfortable feeling in the back of your throat. It kind of hurt to talk. Luckily they gave me a lot of morphine at that time to kind of get me through having that tube. It ended up pumping out over 1 liter of stomach acid, I guess, whatever was in my stomach. After having the NG tube for about a day, the next morning they did an endoscopy. They put me asleep, did that procedure, and then when I woke up they had removed the tube, and I was really excited because it was super awkward. So they did the endoscopy. They like said, okay, yeah, we can see where this is compressed. We also saw some lacerations in your stomach. The doctor described it as the inside of my stomach looked as if an angry cat was trying to maul its way out. They wanted to keep me 1 more night and do the test the next day, but luckily they sent me home and I went back in the next day. So the next day they wanted me to do this test and it didn't really work out. They wanted me to drink 2 cups of barium, which is a white liquid that is visible on x-rays. I have it pulled up because I didn't really know what it was. The best way I can describe it as is like liquid chalk. It was disgusting. It was like this thick white liquid. It was really gross. Anyways, I tried drinking it. It hurt my stomach to drink, so they said, you know what, like, let's just stop right here and we'll do it a different time. So flash forward to January 15th. They wanted to retry that test. You know, they wanted to give me some time to just like recuperate from the hospital stay. Went ahead and did that barium test. Basically, I drank 2 cups of barium and then every 15 minutes they would do an x-ray to see how it had progressed throughout my digestive system. And those results came in, and that was the test that needed done to like actually confirm that I had it. So like all those tests before showed possibilities, but this one like actually confirmed. So they confirmed that I had it. And then from that point on, I just started meeting with a GI doctor almost every week. Yeah, about every week or so to kind of just discuss like treatment options. Take note that throughout this whole entire time, I was on a liquid-only diet. So Boost, Ensure, any other protein shake. I eventually started doing like mashed potatoes, applesauce, oatmeal, stuff that didn't require chewing, basically. That was difficult in itself because, first of all, I love to eat. I don't know how many times I brought up wanting chicken nuggets throughout that whole time, but it was a lot. So meeting with the GI doctor, talking about, you know, how I was doing on the liquid diet and like what was the next step. So his main goal for me was to try and gain at least 10 pounds to start, but end goal, he wanted me to gain 25 or 30, which, hold on now, not gaining 30 pounds, sorry, just not. But he was like, try to gain the weight, and then we'll just like reassess the situation. And after time had gone on, I wasn't gaining weight. I actually started to lose a little bit, and he set me up with a surgeon to possibly discuss like what surgery options were. I met with her for the first time on February 7th, and she was a general surgeon that specialized in bariatric surgery, and she met with me, told me, hey, like, these are your surgery options. There were 3 different options that I could have done. Some were less invasive than the others, but bottom line was she didn't want to do surgery on me. She was like, I think that with some weight gain and proper nutrients, like, you can get through this and it will correct itself. So instead of focusing on surgical options at that point, we were focusing on how can you gain weight. At that point, I was starting to eat a little bit more. I was eating a lot of French fries, ice cream, stuff like that. And the next step, if that didn't work, was a feeding tube, either a nasal feeding tube or one that goes straight into my stomach. So that really scared me. I did not want to have a feeding tube, especially considering the fact that I would have had to have it for 12 weeks or so. So from that point on, we just kept following up and seeing how things were going. Obviously, the no surgery at that time did not make me happy. I really wanted the quick fix. I was sick of eating and drinking liquid things. I was sick of having no energy. It was really starting to wear on my mental health. And I was just really frustrated at the time. The surgeon did mention, like, all stomach surgeries are pretty high risk. She said the stomach is like one part of the body that doesn't like to be messed with. So I respected her opinion on that. Her idea at the time was maybe trying a feeding tube. I didn't like this idea. It would have either been a nasal feeding tube or one directly into my small intestines to get proper nutrition. I think that's what really motivated me to start eating more and trying different things. I did not want a feeding tube. I mean, I still had class, I still had work. I didn't want people to look at me weird if I had a tube coming out of my face. So that was something that definitely was a turning point, I think. I started eating a lot more things, or trying to. Obviously, there were a lot of foods that did not agree with my stomach well. A lot of times I had a lot of pain. But for the most part, I slowly started to get better, which was good. And after I told her, hey, like, I think it's starting to get a little better, you know, my symptoms are not as consistent as what they were before. So that was, I think, early mid-March, that last appointment I had with her, and she wanted to follow up 4 weeks later, depending on how things were going. But obviously that's when all of this coronavirus stuff happened. So I kind of held off on scheduling an appointment with her, and I'm really happy to say at this point I'm eating literally everything without problems for the most part. There are still times I will have stomach pain after eating, and luckily they gave me Zofran and a couple other things that I can take when I start having issues, but for the most part I'm doing a lot better. I've gained 13 pounds since then, which I think I owe to being quarantined and being bored, because I have been eating a lot more. But it's just really interesting that everything did end up resolving on its own. I was really thinking a couple months ago that I would end up having to get surgery to correct it, but as of right now, I am doing a lot better. The only thing I think at this point I have to worry about is maintaining the weight I've gained, because if at any point I start to lose more weight, I think that's when I will lose that fat pad around my small intestines, and I have a risk of those arteries constricting it again. Anyways, I appreciate anyone, like I said, who has taken interest in this. I don't take people asking about it as like they're being nosy. I actually appreciate people asking, because A, that means that to some degree they probably care a little bit about my like well-being or health, and B, if people want to know, I mean, it is a very rare condition. Only 0.1 to 0.3% of the US population has it, so I get why people would have questions, and I don't take offense to it. So That being said, if you do have any other questions about my experience, feel free to comment or DM me or message. I am really open about it, and I hope that if any of you have some sort of stomach issue or any health issue that you've been kind of brushing under the rug, go get it checked out. Like, at the time, I definitely was worried about, oh my gosh, the medical bills. But at the end of the day, it's so much better to know what is going on inside of you than to not know and to just guess. So that's basically all I have to say. Once again, thank you for watching. I appreciate your interest.